Real questions, real answers for real life. Come on in and pull up a chair. You're at 1850 Main Street with Michael DelGiorno and David Zanotti.
A good friend drops by today. Meet Paul Winkler, president of Paul Winkler, Inc., a specialist in the fields of financial planning and family counseling.
Hey, Paul, tell me, how many degrees are you carrying around these days?
All right, yeah, I have a lot. I've got 8 financial planning degrees, so any of them will do. Seriously. Chartered financial consultant, chartered life underwriter, training counsel fellow, chartered advisor for senior living, accredited asset management specialist, wealth management certified planner. Just forget it, whatever. I don't care. But it's just the reason I put those two together is there's so much about money that is so psychological. And the reality of it, it's ministry. Quite frankly, David, I'm kind of doing it's ministry. It's kind of fun. I'm just enjoying it.
So I'm reading the Wall Street Journal, kind of like young Frankenstein, turning the pages. And
Hey, Paul, him reading the Wall Street Journal. I know what happens.
It's good
but
stuff.
Can you get the picture?
from the hippie movement of the 60s with LSD and escaping reality and checking out of society, now we find out the headline in the Wall Street Journal is that magic mushrooms, LSD, ketamine, the drugs that power Silicon Valley. So the very people that are creating all the technology that is creating chaos in our lives are getting these ideas and depending on these drugs for that creativity. Is history repeating itself?
I think history always repeats itself. It's like the Tower of Babel. You think about it, trying to find a way to build your way to God. You want to get, and that's what they're trying to do is trying to figure out a way to, we weren't given a brain that was adequate, Michael, David. We weren't given a brain that we need to make our brains better because somehow it's inadequate.
Well, now, here's my question.
Yeah.
Ketamine,
Ketamine.
potato. What is it? Is it ketamine?
Ketamine, yeah.
Okay. It sounds so much cooler as ketamine, but let's make it ketamine. What is ketamine?
What is it? Yeah.
So this is not an area that this is not part of our schooling to get into actual drugs, but it's something that's well known. It's a dissociative anesthetic drug that is being used by people. It's illegal. It's being used really for mind-altering experiences to try to, expand your knowledge and your creativity and see things that you didn't see before. And what's happening is this stuff can be really addictive. If you look at like the side effects of this stuff, it's nasty, guys.
That's in the article. Yeah.
And like disorientation, confusion, loss of motor coordination, dizziness, nausea, vomiting, increased blood pressure, heart rate, breathing, body temperature.
I think I'd rather be uncreative.
I know. Yeah, besides that, it's great for you, right?
It's like those commercials at night. I want to get back to the hemorrhoid at some point.
Oh, yeah.
So, but now LSD and mushrooms, now that's all about hallucinogenics, right? And escape.
Well, you look at this whole thing, and as a matter of fact, I was actually doing, of all things, a sermon recently where they asked me to say, hey, bring mental health and the church together, Paul. Can you bring these two things together? And I said, yeah, what do you want me to talk about? And they said, well, what's going on? And I said, well, kind of the whole idea of addiction. When we think of addict, we think of somebody sitting in an alleyway, strung out with a syringe in their hand, right? That's kind of the thing that you have. But people they've always been addicted to things like drugs, alcohol, gambling, sex, pornography, and social media, and, shopping and whatever. And you look at what's happening now, we are in a society, and I'm telling you, this is something that I don't think we've ever seen before, where people are getting on social media, they're trying to get affirmed by going to some social media account. Everybody has these whitewashed lives. And what people are doing is there's this biopsychosocial aspect of addictive behavior. And the bio is really what we're talking about here with these drugs. And what I mean by that, you have biopsycho, so you got biology, your psychology, and your social aspect. And if you look at what's going on, there are 3 things that we need, jokingly we like to say in psychology. There are 3 things you need to survive. You need food, water, and dopamine. And you look at dopamine and go, well, what is dopamine? Well, that's the thing that motivates us to get the heck out of bed in the morning.
Right.
It's the reward center, right? You get euphoria from that. And if you look at it, the amount of dopamine you need in your system is like 50 nanograms per deciliter to feel normal.
I was just telling David that.
Were
the
you
other
really?
day, that it was
That's
50.
amazing.
Yeah, that it was 50.
That's amazing. Well,
He's not finding me
yeah,
funny at all.
I
He's
know.
giving me a
It's
dirty
like-
look.
well, and if you're having like,
And I am really into this. Now, hang on. Okay, yes, the obvious question, well, like, is 50 deciliters, are we talking about just a little bit? I mean, what is that?
it's a little bit. So, David, if you're having like a bad day and things aren't going so well, you might have 40 nanograms per deciliter in your bloodstream, right? I can get out of bed, but it's not easy. 50, it's like I'm feeling pretty good. 100, best day ever. I just won the lottery. I've been told I'm the best looking person, the smartest person anybody's ever seen in their life.
Okay, time out. Now, time out. I got to
Yeah.
stop you. You trained psychologist, degreed, you're in this field. I got to stop and make sure I heard
Yes.
you right. Because, child of the 60s with drugs, and it's like, I've kind of seen a
Okay.
few of these things. You're telling me that if I've got a low dopamine level in my body, getting out of bed, I'm going to have a bad day. Or I'm going to feel like I'm having a bad day.
Yes. Yeah, it's really, really tough. And what happens, and here's where you get to the drug stuff. Let's say somebody takes meth. I saw that there's one study that showed that people get up to like 1,100 in their system when they do that. It's way above what the human body was ever designed to take.
It could be the same thing with coffee. It could be the same thing with your morning cigarette.
No. Nowhere near.
Uh-uh.
Nowhere near. Now, you might find alcohol and marijuana and heroin, that gets you up into the high hundreds. But you get on meth, it's 1,100, Michael.
Oh.
So you look at that, and here's what happens. This is the thing that gets you.
Wow.
Every subsequent time you take it, it drops. 800, 700,
Chase it.
600.
Gotta chase it.
And then it gets down below the 40, right? And just to feel good enough to get out of bed, now you got to keep taking. And that's what happens. And you look at this and say, well, is it the drug itself that's actually addictive? That's a question that people ask, right? And you probably guys may have heard of diamorphine. I don't know if you ever heard of that. But if you go in, let's say you go in to get a hip operation, and you're getting diamorphine, that is basically a pure form of heroin, right? So what happens is grandma goes in and gets an operation. Now, some people will go in and get that operation, and they're hooked. Right? You've seen that before.
Mm-hmm.
They're hooked. They get that painkiller and they're hooked. But most people don't. And that's basically what we got is where people are getting hooked and you go, well, why are they getting hooked if it isn't necessarily the drug necessarily hooking them? And there was this study that was done. And what they did is they looked at, so why is it that people go to drugs? Why do they go into addiction? And this is what fascinated me in the psychology and in the training in the marriage and family therapy. They had this guy that was talking about attachment theory. Okay, so he said a lot of us are securely attached. In other words, I got mom, and I can go away from mom, and I look back and, yeah, mom's still there. And I can go a little further away from her, and I look back and go, she's still there, or dad, whoever. I keep going further until I get to the point where now I'm independent. I'm off on my own. I can go do my own thing. But I always knew that mom was there. And I always knew she had my back, or that dad had my back. Or if you think about it, who else can have your back? God can have your back. And what happens, we're raising a whole generation of people that are not securely attached. And we have what's called insecure attachment. And most of them, I'm telling you guys, end up with what's called anxious attachment, which is where they feel totally inadequate. They're grabbing on. You ever had that person, like you're dating this person?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't let go of you? They're like, don't leave me, don't leave me, don't leave me,
Yeah, it's the lifeguard effect. Yeah.
Can I don't mean
No,
to
you're
cut
fine.
off
You're fine. No, go ahead.
Or cut to a chase, but
Yeah, man.
we see this rise of autism, and some will debate it's vaccines, some will debate it's all these other things, and I get it. A lot of times it's all the above, but we have this tremendous rise in autism, depression, and addiction, more so than any other generation. How much of this traces to the strength and addictiveness of these drugs, or the lack of identity, lack of purpose, and lack of manageable things, an unmanageable lifestyle? In other words, is it really a chemical addiction, or are we trying to run from or replace something, what we've been created to have and no longer have, and now we're chasing it through another chemical?
Well, the autism thing is kind of different. I don't know if you ever heard of Temple Grandin. Temple Grandin they had, how do we wash these cows? How do we bathe them? Because we're scaring them and all of that stuff. And she's on the spectrum, so that's what we call that is autism spectrum. Used to call it Asperger's. Still, some people still call it that. But basically what happened was that she saw in her mind, very visual thinkers. And she said, if it weren't for autistic people, let me tell you something, we'd still be sitting outside of caves, in front of fires, because a lot of the creativity and a lot of the new things come from people that are on the spectrum. So that's a whole different deal. But let me go to the other thing that you're talking about, because
depression, anxiety,
and addiction. Anxiety, and addiction. So what happens here? You look at this addiction thing and you say, well, what are people trying to do? They're trying to attach to something. When I said anxious attachment, they don't feel like they belong, and they're always clinging. And then you'll have avoidant attachment, which is, I don't need you. I don't need anybody. I'm perfectly fine on my own.
I thought that meant you were Italian. What did I miss there?
I was gonna say, they call that Del Zanotti.
Yeah, I don't need you. I don't need nobody.
You broke my heart, Winkler. And I kiss you on the lips and say goodbye.
Take the cannoli and forget the gun or whatever.
Leave the gun and take the cannolis.
So, don't you love it when Anglos try to do lines as a Godfather?
it ain't
Michael, it's
gonna work.
perfect.
He's a cake eater. He's doing the best he can. He's a cake eater.
Don't ever ask me to do an impression. Forget it. It's not going to happen. But seriously, what happens is we have the saying that if you don't attach to somebody, you're going to attach to something. So what we do is...
Say that one again.
Yeah,
that's powerful.
If you don't attach to somebody, you're going to attach to something. So you think about it. When you got pornography, you've got this two-dimensional image, right? That will not reject me. And, an example I like to use is, Christmas Carol. You got Scrooge, and he's got the woman that loves him, and she's like, choose between me and your work. And, there's a danger choosing her because she can reject him. There's no danger because money's not going to reject him. And quite frankly, the thing in America, the thing that really gets you, this is the real challenge, is that you take money and you take work, and those two things are socially acceptable addictions. You can be addicted to both those things, and they'll pat you on the back for being so productive and so good and so successful. So what happens is we don't attach to that person. We will go to something because I won't end up getting rejected by that. And the most common thing we see in marriages is this. We see what we call a pursue withdraw type of relationship. So you guys have seen this. We call it tiger and turtle. You got this, let's say it's the wife, sometimes it's the guy, wants to get, just wants attention, wants to be connected to their spouse. And what they do is they start to approach, and then you get the person that feels a little bit insecure. That's the withdrawer. And what they do is they go into a shell. And all of a sudden, the one that was pursuing goes into a primal panic. Oh my God, my husband isn't listening to me. He's tuning me out. He's shutting down. And then she starts to pursue even harder. He's scared because if he says something, he might say the wrong thing. She may reject him. And then when she rejects him, that's terrible for him. So what he does is he shuts down to protect himself and protect her from what he might say. I'm just going to use him and her here. Then what happens is then she ramps it up, and she may even attack him and tear him apart. What she wants him to go, honey, you matter to me. Mm-hmm. You're important to me. And that is not forthcoming from a withdrawer because that's not how they operate. And then what happens, he withdraws even further. And this is a cycle we see. And we're not just seeing this with husbands and wives. We're seeing this with all of humanity because they're getting out on social media. They're getting rejected. They're crying out and nobody's hearing them because they don't know how to communicate anywhere else but social media. It's an unreal problem.
Michael began in talk radio over 30 years ago. David has been working in the field of public policy and media for over 40 years. They've been around and seen a lot. To learn more about Michael and David, visit 1850mainstreet.com.
For years, we saw celebrities struggle with fame. Fame was very destructive. The more famous, the more destructive. Elvis literally slowly killed himself. Whitney Houston slowly killed herself. I believe that we were created by God to serve him and to volitionally choose to love him. We are not meant to be worshiped. And it's a very destructive thing. So as we turn to social media, where we think we're the celebrity now because we're posting videos of ourselves every day, or people are struggling with that level of narcissism. Isn't it interesting that the same depression that we saw stars have, the same drug and destructive patterns we saw stars have, are now happening to everybody because they think they're a star because they're on the internet?
Yeah, there's a fascinating study that'll explain it that I can tell you guys about.
So if you keep your identity right, you're not tricked into any of this stuff. So does it go back to what I've always said? You never abandon something, in this case, God.
Mm-hmm.
There's a creator. I'm not him. I'm the creation. I have a role. That once you abandon that, then you replace it with what? Mushrooms, LSD, technology, money, business, work, shutting down, turning on, turning off?
Yeah, you ready for this study? This will blow your mind. This guy named Dr. Bruce Alexander did this study. And what he did is he took an empty cage and he stuck a rat in it. And then what he did is he put 2 bottles on the cage. You know how they have those little drinking bottles, right? You know what I'm talking about? Okay, so one was filled with water. The other one was filled with cocaine and heroin. And what happened is the rat went, try the water, don't want that, went over the heroin, cocaine, kept drinking it until the rat died of an overdose, killed itself.
He wouldn't stop.
Then what he did is he'd go, whoa, wait a minute. The rat's bored. There's nothing in there. Why don't we make, and it was called the Rat Park Experiment. Why don't we put tunnels in there? We'll put wheels in there. We'll put cheese in there. We'll put other rats in there for the rat to fellowship with, right? Not one rat OD'd on the heroin cocaine, not one of them.
You attach to things or people? Or you attach to things?
Yes. That was exactly it.
Well, isn't that interesting? Because the internet produced nothing but loneliness, right, guys?
Well, that's absolutely true. It's isolation. That's what's killing us. And they said, well, wait a minute, we're not rats. So they said, hey, well, we got another experiment for you. You ready for this one? Okay, Vietnam. There were guys that went over there and they got hooked on heroin, right? So what they did is they tested them. They actually followed them when they came back from Vietnam. And they said, how many stayed on the heroin when they came back? And they go, oh my goodness, 95% of them got off because they were able to come home to family, friends, loved ones, job, purpose. They literally were able to get off.
Can you guys think if we were sitting here at this 1850 Main Street table 3 years ago and we wanted to design, as it was pre-prepared, a bigger, dramatic nightmare scenario than the COVID lockdowns?
It's hard to fathom because, you think about it, Michael. I mean, dead on right. You got these masks on. And think about what women are doing as they're pushing their baby carriages with the phone in front of their face. The baby's trying to connect to them. This is another experiment that was mind-blowing. It's called the blank face experiment. And what they did is they took a woman and her little baby girl, put them in a room together. And they said, okay, interact with the baby. And they're going back and forth. And, the baby's like smiling and giggling and pointing. And the mother's responding, looking back at what the mom's pointing at and all of that stuff. And what happened is they said, okay, now I want you to go blank face. Just no expression whatsoever. The baby starts going, wait, what's going on here? You can see the panic in the baby's eyes. The baby squeals, screams. And the mother is staying blank face. It is the hardest thing to watch. Then fast forward, they did this with a couple. And what they showed is that this never goes away even as you age. They took a couple, husband and wife. And the woman, therapist, says, hang on, I'll be right back. The therapist leaves the room for a long time. The husband and wife are talking and she goes, yeah, honey, I think this is going to be really good. And she goes, I think this is really good. This session's going to be really good. And you know what else I think? I think you're going to really enjoy yourself at my sister's this weekend. And he's shutting down. He's visibly going into that turtle thing. And he's shutting her out. And she starts ramping up just like the baby did until the point she's going, I don't know why I ever married you. It escalates to that. And then what happens is you see a moment of repair later on. But I have used that video in counseling sessions with people, with women, especially when they're dealing with this. and they are absolutely just stunned because that is their experience.
You never know who might be stopping by at 1850 Main Street, and the conversation is just getting started. To get connected, check out 1850mainstreet.com. We don't data mine anyone or sell your information. Subscribe today so you don't miss a single guest or conversation. We'll see you next time here at 1850 Main Street.